Whether you are new to the game, looking to get into it, or haven't played since the beta, there are undoubtedly some small yet valuable implementations that you have yet to discover. If you already have some experience with the game, you know this is true. The more you play, the more of these that you will find. Rather than letting you play in the dark and forcing you to come upon these finds on your own, we decided to create a list that will lay all of them out for you in just a few minutes. Without further ado, here are our top picks regarding the 20 things we wish we knew before playing Valorant. Starting it off, we have 2 minimap tips that will significantly boost your knowledge in-game once implemented and used properly. Coming in at number 1, we have our first and only setting recommendation throughout the list. Although many settings such as keybinds and sensitivity are subjective and should be changed based on everyone's personal preference, those regarding the minimap have generally been mass decided by Valorant pros and high-level players in order to gain the most information. Generally agreed upon as the most important variation of these settings, however, is disabling the keep player centered option. What this will do is allow you to see the whole map at all times, no matter your location. Contrarily, when this setting is not turned off, which is the default, you will often not be able to see A site when holding B or the opposite, often cutting you off from crucial information. In addition, directly playing off this tip in order to gain a better understanding of map usage, you may or may not have noticed the circle that appears around your character's image on the minimap while running. Ultimately, this simply shows the distance at which the enemy is able to hear your footsteps. This is critical information simply because, unlike many other games, footsteps are not nullified by walls throughout Valorant. The only factor that plays a part is distance. Being able to see and understand this distance on the minimap will allow you to be more aware of when running is a valid option and when walking is a key to conceal your position. Following this, for tips 3 and 4, we will help you get better with your utility usage on Sage. Firstly, her wall. Debatedly her most impactful ability, as it can help you slow down enemy pushes or boost yourself up. Sage's wall's use on defense is often very black and white, yet very useful. On attack, however, many people find themselves stumped. Some choose to put it up when pushing in, others like to block off an entry point once the bomb is down. Well, here is one way that you can use Sage's wall in an untraditional fashion. On point A of ascent, if you line up on the edge of the platform anywhere to the right of the generator, you can place a wall in rafters. When climbing up on the box that allows you to have vision to this area from sight, you will notice a small gap in the floor that creates a one-way for you while still not allowing the enemy to push through. This will give you a huge advantage and will ultimately be much more beneficial than a normal wall. Secondly, although not as significant in my opinion, we will show you a slow orb that can directly help you win more retakes when the bomb is planted on A site haven. If you find yourself rotating from B once the spike is placed down, you can walk into the corner right as you exit B site and line up your crosshair with the corner in which the top building's roof meets the wall. This slow orb will land directly on site behind boxes, allowing your teammates in CT to push up much easier as the enemy is forced to change their position or hide. Coming after Sage, we have some helpful tips for CYPHER that can help you gain much more value from your abilities on defense. For our first 2 tips regarding CYPHER, we're going to have to make our way to the B site of Split. Firstly, we will walk through the camera spot on this point. Coming out of spawn, if you make your way into heaven and then push onto the rafter and proceed to hop down onto the wooden box, you will be able to jump and place a camera anywhere onto the wall that creates a perimeter of the site. Although this has now become a fairly common camera spot, the freedom that comes alongside with being able to place the camera anywhere on the wall will not allow the enemy to guess where the camera is before you check it, ensuring that you can get a good amount of vision on site nearly all of the time. In addition to this, you can also utilize a one-way cage location that will block off main and allow you to watch the tunnel from the back of site. In order to do this, you have to hug the corner created by the boxes to the wall of the left of B main. Afterwards, line up your crosshair slightly to the right of the wooden contour on the wall above the doorway in order to clip the cage on top of it. Ultimately, this cage can be used once your tripwires in B main are broken or triggered in order to gain an advantage while peaking the angle. By waiting for the tripwires to be broken, you will ensure that your enemies are in the hallway and won't have the time to back up in order to hide. Unlike on Split, however, on A site Ascent is where CYPHER's trapwires take the crown as his most useful ability. Rather than simply putting the trapwires in the choke, walking towards the right side of the door and placing the wire on the box will hook it to the other end on the outside of the door frame, often facing the enemies to tank the trip in order to break it. Trapwires such as these will often give you much more value simply because they ensure that you will see at least one enemy. In addition, as a bonus tip, it is good to know that placing 2 tripwires in one location is good once in a while. If the enemy is only expecting one, the second trapwire will usually catch them off guard. Don't do this every round, however, since the enemies will start to expect it. That will help you better use the game's built-in UI to your advantage. When you're on a save round and are wondering if you should light buy or perhaps full save, it is good to know that there is a place where you can see your minimum credits for the next round. When opening up the buy menu, this information is located on the top right-hand side. Generally, a good tip is to save enough that you will have above 4,000 credits for the next round in order to be able to fully buy. Our next 3 tips will be surrounded by the ominous Omen. Known for his deception and ability to fake out enemies, this first tip can be used in most situations in order to become safer and more concealed while using Shadow Step. Although many don't know this, you are able to teleport while you're mid-jump. You can use this seemingly general tip in a much more complex fashion, however. If you jump right before you TP, you can actually perform most of the animation behind a wall. This will not only nullify enemy shots coming in, but will also reduce the chance of the enemy knowing where you are intending to go, as they can't see which way you're facing. Coming up next is a one-way smoke that can be used to hold Haven really easily. If you find that you are being pushed out of long or your teammate has died in that position, simply placing a smoke on the box closest to long choke will allow you to see the bottoms of enemies' feet from the right of the green box on site. Ultimately, you can use this to hold off the enemy since they most likely will be forced to push back when seeing this smoke. Similar to this smoke, we have a slightly more advanced one-way that can be used to hold a ramp on split from heaven. In order to land this smoke successfully, you will first need to make your way to ramp from heaven. You then aim your crosshair above the LED on the wall. When doing so, you should place the bottom of the inner Omen circle on top of the LED and the right side along the right corner of the wall. Ultimately, if you do this properly, you will be able to see the people trying to push heaven or sight and get a few free kills that could change the round. Our next tip will be surrounded by ultimate usage. Although you likely have noticed that some ultimates, like CYPHER's for example, can't be stopped after using even if the character dies in the process, other ultimates can. Some of these include Jet, Raze, SOVA, OMEN, and Viper. This is good to know simply because it is sometimes best to cancel your ult or pause and resume it various times if your character allows you to do so. For instance, if you are using Jet's ultimate and have an operator as your primary weapon, you might find it that it is actually better to hold a tight angle with your operator even if you have your ultimate ready, giving you some necessary flexibility. Coming up next is the one and only Brimstone. This is a big one since we have seen many Brimstones not use a lot of their abilities effectively. Although his abilities are generally pretty simple in of themselves, there are some lineups for smokes and molotovs that can get you a significant advantage over your opponent. For our first tip, we will make our way over to A long on Haven. For this, you have to line up the corner of long box and line your crosshair up halfway in between the straps on the box and slightly to the left of where the cement ends. Ultimately, this will allow you to place a molotov behind the boxes in mid-sight and clear off that angle very safely. In addition, you can also plant here in order to molly off any fakes and ensure that you get the spike explosion, kind of like how you use your ultimate. Next up, we have a smoke also for attack. When you make your way out of hookah, you might have found that it is sometimes hard to clear the double-stacked green boxes without making yourself vulnerable from other angles. Well, no longer should you have this issue after learning this smoke. In order to clear this angle safely, all you have to do is simply place a smoke on top of the boxes. This will make the enemies blind, but also allow you to see their feet, making for a very simple kill. Next up for Brimstone, we have a tip regarding his ultimate on attack. From my personal experience throughout playing in lower and higher ranks, I have found that many Brimstone players often have a hard time using their ultimate. They hold on to it for a very long time and often use it only once per half and maybe even get no kills. Ultimately, in order to combat this, you should simply plant in a corner when you have the spike. Although this sounds weird, there is a valid explanation. Planting in a corner will allow you to place your ultimate in a way that will ensure the enemy's death even after a fake defuse, simply because they only have 2 directions to run rather than 4. In order to close out Brimstone and truly solidify his kit in your mind, we have a tip about his stim beacon. Although many players only use this to boost themselves, just know it is good for your team as well. For instance, if you're clearing a site and your whole team is walking in through a single choke, it is good to place a stim for them to walk through during this process in order for them to gain a fire rate boost while clearing the site. Simple tip, yet very beneficial when put into practice. Coming up next, SOVA. As you may have noticed throughout your time playing the game, SOVA is one of the hardest agents to master simply due to his huge number of arrow spots throughout the game. Although you likely have seen some of these already, we will go through some of the simple yet still effective ones that can get you started with this agent. Coming in at number 1, you can actually get a recombo into the top right corner of the top roof of Haven coming from B link to A site once the bomb is planted down. Although the enemy will likely shoot this one, it often gets off at least one wave of the recon process before getting shot down, giving you all the information that you're going to need for a successful retake. Next up, we have a slightly more advanced shock dart that will get many SOVA players excited. In order to do this, all you have to do is make your way into the defender side spawn on the map Bind. As you cross the corner walking towards A, you will see 2 posters on the wall. By walking facing towards the middle of these 2 posters, you will place yourself in the perfect position. Then you will have to pull out your shock dart. This will cause a little HUD to pop up telling you how to use your left and right click. Lining up the slight arrow above the left click on the HUD once your shock dart is pulled out is the key to this shock dart lineup. Once you have done so, giving your bow a shot with only 1/3 charge will land this directly on the default plant position, allowing you to kill planters very easily. After SOVA, we have tips about our first duelist, Phoenix. Coming up first is his Molotov. Although many people don't often use lineups for his Molotov, you definitely can. There are many that can clear sites similar to the way that Brimstone's Molotov can. For instance, if you're playing A on Bind and have already planted A default, you can jump up on the platform to the right of A short and line your crosshair up with the top right-hand corner of the middle building and run, jump, throw. This throw isn't very precise, so you don't really have to stand in a specific location, but your Molotov should always land on the bomb if it is performed correctly, nullifying fakes or maybe even killing the diffuser. Phoenix's wall can also be used in more effective fashions than just healing yourself. Although many people have already developed the skills required to split off sites on attack, there are some wall spots that can stop attacks on defense. For instance, staying on Bind, you can throw a wall through the TP on A site in order to stop a push in mid. This will give your teammates more time to push and those holding hookah more space to move around or push up. Tip number 3 on Phoenix, although more general, will help you in more situations and general fights. This one is regarding his flash. Although many people prefer to flash, wait for it to pop, and then proceed to peek, this sometimes isn't always the best option. Sometimes flashing and peeking while backwards is actually what you want to be aiming for. Although this will still get you slightly flashed, it won't be for very long, allowing you to turn around after the flash and be in a very different position from where the enemies last saw you, giving you a significant advantage in the next gunfight. Next up on our list is boosting. Although Valorant does not allow you to boost on players' heads like CSGO or some other games, you actually can still use the boost concept on several maps in order to gain high ground without being forced to use an ability. For instance, on Ascent, you can boost on the wall leading into B main and proceed to ask for a Sage wall to boost you up even further in order to watch mid from an angle that the enemy will definitely not be suspecting. Ultimately, we decided to add this to our list because although it's very situational, tactics like this will very often get you entry kills that can alter round outcomes. Alright guys, these were our top picks for the 20 things that we wish we knew before playing Valorant. If you feel like we left something out, feel free to put it in the comments down below and help out the new players just starting out with the game. We hope you found this beneficial and you can implement some of these tactics in order to better yourself as a player and hopefully rank up. My name has been Renox, stay safe, and I wish you all great games.